Greetings, everyone. I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of adventure. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you're here today, joining us and sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, you are appreciated just as you are. As you can see, I am not alone. I have an amazing guest. He goes by the name of MoMan. What's going on, MoMan?
Man, living life. What's good?
I think you and now Wally B are the most reoccurring guests in the duration of this. I think this is your third time on the podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, man.
So you and Wally.
Yeah, that's great fucking company, man. That's a stand-up dude. I fucks with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Anchor of Southern poetry, man. He's one of them cats that's done a lot of work that if you're not a Southern poet, you don't really know everything he's done, man. But I got nothing but fucking love for that dude, man.
Agreed.
Icon of the shit.
Agreed. So, I'm grateful that I was a part of the Southern Fried community for the time I was. So I got to meet so many amazing people like you and him. It's a blessing. So why don't I introduce you to folks via your bio? How does that sound?
Man, lovely.
Let's do it. Recognized by Poetry Slam Inc. as a legend of the South, MoMan is a nationally celebrated poet, essayist, and one of the preeminent emerging voices of leftist, intersectional, social advocacy. A Watering Hole graduate fellow and MFA candidate, Amoja's work throughout the Arkansas poetry scene was a legendary seed. From his essays discussing the role of law enforcement to the value of capitalism, he is best known for fusing the art of intellectual into the familiar. He has headlined poetry festivals such as the Austin International Poetry Festival, the Bridgewater International Poetry Festival, Write NOLA in New Orleans, and Rock the Republic in Texas. As a resident artist of several Southern arts and education rosters, he lectures at schools and literally nonprofits while teaching creative pedagogy and keynoting at social advocacy conferences like Long Beach Indie Film Pedagogy Conference and Furious Flower throughout the nation. Y'all, if you've been listening to this since we began in 2016, he's one of the, as we already said, longtime guests. So we're so glad to have you here, man. Let me just show you some love.
Yes. I just realized that I'm actually going to have to update that bio because I'm no longer an MFA candidate. I am, in fact, a possessed of the thing. Right.
When I read that, I was like, I feel like there's a little edit we need in here. So, So, hey, I wanted to come out of, I didn't plan on doing any interviews until August so I could spend time with Jai and Ma, but I wanted to, we got to interrupt all plans to address what's going on. So I'm so grateful that you agreed to sit down. I'm sure you have so much going on. So I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you.
And thanks for having me.
Of course. So I don't know even know if there's a question that needs to be asked. More of the stage is yours. What's on your heart? What's on your mind? Where would you like to start? What's going on?
Yo, man, what's wild to me is how motherfuckers be on this fucking virtue signaling. I feel like that's the shit that's on my heart the most because it's so many cats right now. You know what I'm saying? Hashtagging Black Lives Matter. But like the black people they know, they got excuses for that shit. Like the black people that die, they wouldn't have fucked with on any type of level. You know what I'm saying? Like, they wouldn't have fucked with George. Like, George was a rapper. You know what I'm saying? He was with Screwed Up Click. Again, that's like a legendary seed down south. If anybody know anything about fucking Texas rap, he was a big part of that. It's why, like, Bun B was up in Minneapolis. But he doesn't fit that ideal of, intellectual, well-to-do. Like, you know what I'm saying? And, like, in life, most people would be fucking terrified to be around him, right? But now that he's dead, all these motherfuckers are rocking like, oh my God. And it makes me sad because these are the kind of people I grew up with. These are the homies. These are the people that I've seen and came up with my whole life that I love, And it's just like, Black life has to matter before we die. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, just over and over and over again, man. All of these respectable people that have no love for people that haven't met a threshold of what constitutes a respectable Black life. But then we die and everybody's sad.
Or rarely sad, it seems.
Right. Well, performatively sad. We're sad as fuck on the internet. Oh my God. You know what I'm saying? And like, these be the homies, man. This is a person that was a human being with a life of his own, with kids of his own, that was trying to do as best as he could in this life. You know what I'm saying? Let's look at worst case scenario. Let's say everything they say is true, and he counterfeited a $20 bill. Okay? A $20 bill. In the United States of America, I did not think that the punishment for that was summary execution. Let's assume the worst of things that they're saying is true, and that's true, right? Never mind the fact that we live in a place where you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and that law enforcement exists not to execute punishment, but in fact to serve process. It is only their job to apprehend, to bring you in front of a jury of your peers or an elected judge that will then mete out a punishment if you cannot prove beyond a shadow of beyond a reasonable doubt that you are innocent, right? But instead we're circumventing that, and we're in Judge Dreadland now, where people can face summary execution at the discretion of a duty officer. That's a bit of a step.
So what was the word that you used for that? Something hashtag, flashing hashtag. What did you call that?
Oh God, it's lost.
We'll have to listen to the playback.
I'm in my bag. I don't know. But no, it's just it's virtue signaling, man. It's performative.
There was the word, virtual signaling. Is that what you're saying?
Virtue, yeah, virtue signaling.
Okay,
right. Like, I'm a good person. You know what I'm saying? It's like there were cats in the slam community. Like my whole life, I've been this way, and people fuck with me or don't because of how I am. You know what I'm saying? But like the thing that you have to give me is I'm a genuine human being. There are poets in the slam world that never fucked with me. You know what I'm saying? And I am as again, I'm an intellectual. You know, I am a person that's done all of the academic things. You know, and then so like, but now these are the people that are all like, oh my God, just what happens to Black people is a crime. But the Black people they actually know don't have great experiences with them. You know, but online, you the most woke. You know, online, you know, you real fucked up. And you might have even went to a protest or two to prove that you're down. It's virtue signaling. Look at what a good person I am. You know, Malcolm X talked about that, you know, when he talked about the difference between the foxes and the wolves, you know, the good white liberal.
We had talked before the call started, and then we said, okay, let's get this on record here. Like I was saying, I could not. I mean, I could believe, but I couldn't believe when I logged on to Amazon, Black Lives Matter. I mean, you were mentioning the mayor of DC.
Mario, I hate Mumbo Sauce Bowser, right? Who has pretty much her entire mayorship worked to de-chocolate DC. She has been such an agent of gentrification and making DC safe, you know, for the investors, which is code if ever, right? She endorsed Bloomberg, for fuck's sake, one of the most violent people to Black people in the last 50 years. When you look at what his policies in New York were like, this is a person who endorsed him for president before he dropped out. But now all of a sudden, Black Lives Matters. You know what I'm saying? And that's a perfect example of virtue signaling. Like, you're not really with us. You're not like in Southwest. You're not in Southeast. You're not in any of the places that are traditionally Black neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? And like you all of the time, you're like, everything that's represented with Blackness in DC, like for example, Mumbo Sauce, which is like, it's a DC institution. Mumbo Sauce is to DC what Philly steaks are to Philly, or what hot dogs are to Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Po' boys to New Orleans. It's such a DC thing. And like the first shit she does is like, I just never understood what the big deal is. It's like, what the fuck is the move for that? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't fuck with it, don't fuck with it. But like, and so like, it's a dog whistle to shit on black shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, but now all of a sudden that the president asked to nationalize her police force on 16th Street, which if you don't know DC, the White House intersects 16th and Pennsylvania, right? 16th runs north and south. So like, if you're going toward the White House from pretty much any part of DC, you have to go down 16th Street to get there. And she puts a huge banner of Black Lives Matter, right? And it's like, do they though? To you, do they? I mean, they definitely do to me. They definitely do to the homies. But do they to you, really? Or is this just another way to troll the president? Perfect example of virtue signaling.
Why do you think, out of all of the countless and probably daily police brutality and murders perpetrated against Black people for centuries, why now do you think all of a sudden we're seeing these corporations and people who usually and continually participate in oppressing Black people now want to climb on board with saying Black Lives Matter? What do you think has led to all of this all of a sudden with this particular moment in time?
Right. So to answer that, I'm gonna rebut by saying water is blue, water is green, water is black. It's just words, right? Saying Black Lives Matter is just a phrase, and it's very, very simple and also trending. It's not in to be a racist, except for the ways that it's totally in to be a racist, right? And it just depends on how your ego manifests your perception of self. If you want to be one of the goodies, if you want to be not racist, right, as opposed to, well, racism cuts both ways, because those are the two zeitgeists in America right now, right? If you want to be one of the racism is bad people, you have to be able to say cute things like Black Lives Matter. But does that mean that you're going to hire Black men, or that you're not going to profile Black youth in schools and have them, overly punished by law enforcement? Does that mean that you're going to move to disarm the police, or at the very least demilitarize the police? Does that mean those things? Of course not. It means Black Lives Matter, right? Which is, again, so it's easy to say it because it's harder to not say it right now. If you don't say it, fuck, even the NFL just came out and was like, oh, we were so wrong, right? Because it's the end thing to say. Like, but words are not systemic policy change. The best words that I've seen so far are from Ben and Jerry's. And look, they did the damn thing. They said the most amazing thing that a company can say. However, they're owned by Procter and Gamble. What did Procter and Gamble say? How have they divested their money to black organizations? Again, if anybody means well in the world as far as like white hippies go, it probably is the guy Ben and Jerry. Like, those two guys have spent their whole lives trying to be uplifting, positive guys, but sometimes people just don't know how far that line is. Like, how many Black people work for Ben and Jerry's? What are their average salaries as they relate to white people that are in same or similar positions, right? It goes so far beyond a soundbite. Even if you give us the best soundbite, how many Black women are in positions of leadership in the corporation for Ben and Jerry's? And this ain't me shitting on them. You know what I'm saying? I feel like, to the best of what they understand, they maybe do want to do well. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they haven't applied that to the logical conclusions of where to take that. If they matter, do they matter while they're alive? What are you doing to make Black life better, more livable? What are you doing to make Black lives matter? If it's just, a fucking quippy soundbite, not that fucking much.
I hear you. So basically what I'm hearing is there's the perception that we're having a critical mass of people wanting to work towards change, but it's really just words. It's just a performance. It's not actually at the level of institutional change or even in my own personal life taking action. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, it is institution-wide virtue signaling. Everybody right now wants to be, I am not a racist. I'll give you an example from my MFA days. You already know. I'm on the Nevada Arts Institute, the Nevada Council of the Arts, Arts and Education roster. I'm on Arkansas's Arts and Education roster, Virginia's Arts and Education roster, and DC Commission for Arts and Humanities. I've taught arts and education across the country for more than a decade, from kindergarten to the university level, right? In my MFA process, I remember going out to get a GTA, which is a graduate teaching assistantship. It's one of the easiest ways to kind of transition into getting a professorship, right? Went in there with the statistics, Black men represent less than 3% of tenure track facilities. It starts now, by giving, and literally 3 white women were on my panels deciding whether or not I had enough qualifications to teach at the college level. And at the end of the day, not a single Black man was offered a GTA residency, right? And then I ended up having to take one of those 3 professors later on, and I'm talking to her about Robin DiAngelo and Peggy McIntosh, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, and White Fragility. And, she's like, yeah, are you talking about the essay? Are you talking about the book? Because she has to demonstrate she's read the book, but she hasn't utilized any of the principles. Like, it hasn't sunk in. It's a stone that's in a river. It gets wet, but the water never gets inside the stone. And that's what these corporations are like. And that's for the ones that really do mean well. Most of them don't mean well. It's just something that's going to get some products sold right now. Like, the NFL has lost so much fucking money under this COVID scenario, this pandemic, right? That the looming thought of any type of boycott would just be catastrophic financially for them. So they have to get in front of these things early on and be like, we were wrong. But again, right? Was Colin Kaepernick offered a job? Is he still signed under non-discretion to talk about his experiences in the NFL? Did they free him from that? Is he allowed to talk about how he was blackballed? Has the NFL admitted that they blackballed him? Right? These are ways that would demonstrate in real ways that Black lives, in fact, do matter. But none of that has happened. They just came out with a speech and, we were wrong. But in the capitalist framework, you say wrong with a check, right? Money is how you demonstrate some type of culpability, in a capitalist framework, which is what we're all living with, which is the biggest reason why reparations has to matter. If slavery was wrong, compensate my people that literally built the framework of this nation, right, for 150 plus years of unpaid work. That shouldn't even be a controversial statement.
Man, I love you, Mo, man.
Thank you, sir.
I think not to focus on the metaphor, but that was a pretty bomb metaphor. I've never heard that, the rock in the water before.
Yeah, truth in advertising. I'm cribbing from Godfather 3. He says something very similar, like, what, it worked. The metaphor worked. When the priest is like, the church has been surrounded by Christ, but the rock, I'm like, yeah, man, this shit works, man. I'm gonna take it. Still the least of the 3, but it's got some gems in there. Credit where credit is due. Fair use.
I think that's a good transition into if you'd be willing to share one of your poems with us.
All right, I want to start out with the educational system, because I feel like it begins very early. You know what I'm saying? So this poem is today's lesson. Founding fathers of the school lunch today. The patriotism was a bit salty, but the homies were bred on fat, so we just added hot sauce and slurped it down anyway. John took 8 years of heaping spoonfuls and walked away hungry for the flash of the D-boys, because they was about that arithmetic and little homie had to get paid. He lurks late. The rest of us stayed, juxtaposed between firm expectations and indoctrination, between I cannot tell a lie and I have a dream, between uniform day and my brother's passed down shoes. High IQs mean little to attention star kids on test day. The homie Rob is an alarm startled eye. I am an empty belly. Mike is field tripping acid. We are a failing school. Teacher, does what she can, mumbling under her breath. The neighborhood is failing. We bring her apples anyway, by way of confiscated smartphones. Science lesson today was matter. We learned we don't.
Wow.
For me, man, it was always real early, man. Like, I mean, I moved around a lot as a kid. You know what I'm saying? I'm a product of the South, but I really came up in the Midwest first. You know what I'm saying? I remember going to Cincinnati schools. I was always in gifted and talented, and then I went to Chicago, which is where most of my family was from. Did like a year or two of school there, and then we moved out to the suburbs. When my father got a job, you know, at a district store, retail store. And so like now I'm in the suburbs, and automatically, because I'm in a whiter neighborhood than you know, the south side of Chicago, automatically the teachers are looking at me like, well, you know, we're gonna have to check his reading levels. It's like, bitch, I'm GT, bro. Like, not to be that dude, but I'm actually pre-genius levels. Like, I'm already testing for shit like Mensa, but like automatically, because I'm coming from the south side of Chicago, they're automatically treating me like, oh well, you know, we're not gonna be able to put him in there with these white kids. He ain't gonna be able to know. You know, and these are teachers that probably don't think about themselves as racist, probably don't see themselves there. You know, the people that I don't have a racist bone in my body. You got something. You know what I'm saying? And it happens really early. You know, and again, I can only imagine what it's like for physically imposing black men. I've never had that problem. You know, I'm a very short dude. You know, I'm kind of chunky now, man, but I was a skinny ass little kid. You know, and like that was my experience. You know, it's just that much worse when you have a certain look. Hey, but they ready to have you on that football team real early. You need to go out and try out for these sports, because that's the whole life they have marked out for you. You know.
You're one of the first people that I heard, and I adapted this too. Instead of saying ally, that it's an aspiring ally. That you're not
aspiring ally. Yeah. Yes, right. And I know a lot of people like to use the word accomplice, right? Same thing, you know. But I mean, I remember one time, man. There was a fuck, man. So many stories. There's an organization that films a lot of poetry, in the slam community. And you know, I'd been trying to get them to come to film Southern Pride, because for some reason they went to all the white festivals but never found their way down south. Because as you know, the rumor is Southern Pride is the black festival, which is not. But again, the ratios are different, right? And he just came up with excuse after excuse after excuse. We were going to pay for their hotel. We had met 75% of their asking price, knowing that they hadn't asked a fucking thing for Rust Belt. They went there and did that shit on the G. You know what I'm saying? But like, to come down south, they couldn't do it. And I called homeboy later on, and he's like, you know, I just want to apologize for what I did. It's just important that you know I'm an ally. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, oh, you an ally? You an ally? You know what I'm saying? Like, the word aspiring is very important, because you don't get determined to an oppressed, you know, minority, especially people that you have personally disenfranchised, that you are an ally. Because that's some real fuck shit to say. Like, there should be some humility there. Like, when it comes to women's rights, as a person that was socialized in the fucking West, every day of my life I got to do Sisyphus work and move a rock up a hill. And if I don't push that rock over the hill and end sexism, it doesn't do me any damn good to talk about the work that I've done in my past, because the problem remains, right? And any woman out there, like, it's not for me to say I'm an ally. It's for them to make their own decision. To tell you straight up I'm an ally is to fucking gaslight you if you have a different experience with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me, I aspire to allyship. And some people don't think I am. Some people are not going to think I am. And my ego has to be okay with that, because I don't get to frame the narrative in their head. I can only get to be the best person I can be and take correction when it's time to take that. We have to aspire to allyship. We shouldn't just be out there claiming shit.
The ego plays such a huge part in this, doesn't it?
Right. Because the ego always manifests self as better than we are. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, again, man, just to say, you know, by the time I made it to the South, you know, I lived in Little Rock, Arkansas. I lived in New Orleans, right? I think one of the things that's very interesting to me is in my life, even though I'm a very diminutive man, I've lived in some of the most dangerous places in the world, right? Grew up in the south side of Chicago. Little Rock was the murder capital of America when I was there. New Orleans spends lots of time as, you know, one of the five most dangerous cities in America. Did my grad school in Baltimore, home of the fucking wire, right? Everywhere I ever lived, it was huge gang shit, right? And I had lots of homies that was associated, lots of homies that weren't. But I tell you right now, just because those was my fucking homies, I couldn't go to nobody and be like, yo, I'm a blood. Bitch, you can aspire to be. You know what I'm saying? But you don't get to claim that shit. Like, motherfuckers in the shit gotta claim you. And there's a whole fucking process for that shit. And that's what I'm saying. Allyship is much the same way. If those people don't fucking claim you, you can't claim shit. It's hubris to claim shit.
And I think if I might add, it's like you're only kind of as good as your last at bat too. So it's not like, well, didn't you see what I did last week? So I think that's
right.
And
that, you know, that's how you end up in these fucking Bernie Sanders situations where it's like, I marched with King. Wow, 60 fucking years ago? How much fucking mileage you feel like you should be able to get off that, bruh? Also, 400,000 other motherfuckers was there too. Also, did y'all cure racism? No, because I don't see your ass in Ferguson. I ain't see your ass in the Baltimore uprising. I definitely don't see your ass in Minneapolis. Yeah, he gave a speech though. Black Lives Matter. What a good guy I am. Virtue, man. Virtue signaling. It's going to be the death of all of this shit because these motherfuckers don't really have skin in the game.
I think if I might add to it, and this is for the white folks listening too, one thing I heard you say that I think is important to highlight too is like each person who's black or brown, if we're talking about allyship and race, is going to be able to determine for themselves where you are on that aspiring. It can't be, yeah, but this other person, they know how down I am, so how don't you know how down? It's like your interactions with each person is going to be like the systemic and the personal matters.
Yeah, bro. I mean, I'm sure Clarence Thomas thinks that there's no racist white person he's ever met. Candace Owens probably thinks black people are the real racists. Like, so, you know, I mean, the quality of your vouch comes from who the fuck is doing the vouch. You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's not act like Quentin Tarantino didn't keep Samuel Jackson around for years as his lots of black friend so he could write nigger in fucking movies 18 to 20 times every film and be like, I can't be racist. Me and Samuel Jackson are friends. And again, that's a white liberal, a person that probably doesn't think of himself as a racist, who doesn't think there's much work that he needs to do at all, you know? It's an easy trap to fall into what a good person I am. The ego immediately rewards you for that type of thought process.
I didn't realize my child's right there on the bed. Adora just dropped her off. I was like, is she over there? I think she's asleep. She's taking it in.
Yeah, osmosis.
There we go. So, you know, the other thing that you're one of the first people I heard talk about this, and now is starting to, you're hearing more and more is defunding the police.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So when you look, the United States is not the only culture in the world. There are cultures, and almost every culture in the world has some type of law enforcement. So ask yourself, why is this phenomena of law enforcement extrajudicial murder happening? And I'm not a lawyer, so I can say murder. Lawyers and judges, they have to dance around the shit. Well, you know, someone died, but, you know, murder has a legal definition. I ask myself, if I did the shit, would I be charged? Yeah, murder. That's what the fuck it is, right? So, like, when we look at that, we have to ask ourselves why that is, and it is the type of weaponry that exists. The fact that you have, posse comitatus, whereas the United States military can't even be deployed on the soil in a policing action except through the most extreme scenarios, which even the Secretary of the Defense is like, yeah, the president is wrong. It's really not that kind of shit. You know what I'm saying? But what has happened is we have police forces with military-grade weapons. In fact, some weapons beyond the grade of the military. Most Americans don't even know it's a war crime to use tear gas in a theater of war. You can't do it. If we're going to talk about things like, and it's just important because Americans don't put the lens that we apply to the world on ourselves, right? And the original Gulf War, right? The number one shit that was said was, well, we got to get rid of Saddam. He gasses his own people, bruh. Like the White House literally gassed citizens that were, you have literally the mayor is like, this was a peaceful protest. This was not a riot. You have lawyers that were there. You had people from all over the world reporting, and like just immediately for a photo op, they're tear gassed and hit with rubber bullets. Like this is really serious stuff, and it makes it that much more egregious when you're talking about people that are literally protesting police overstepping. You know what I'm saying? Like, so when that's what's happening, right? But there are ways you can still, so like, again, what is the service of the police? It's their job to apprehend a suspect, right? And the argument is, well, we can't be sure that they're not going to damage us or hurt us. So let me take that on a couple of levels. One, dangerous. It's a dangerous job. This is what Republicans will tell you. This is what sympathizers for fascists will say. But the statistical proof is law enforcement is not even a top 20 dangerous job in America. Logging is much more dangerous. Much more dangerous than being law enforcement. Being deep sea fishing, again, much more dangerous. Those are top 5 jobs. But no one would understand if on logging missions, you just started killing people. Like, well, trees fall on people. We out here logging. The timber industry is important. No one would understand that. So that's the first thing. It's not as dangerous as most Americans believe. The second thing I would say is the police are not without recourse. If you were to damage a law enforcement officer in any capacity for any reason, up to and including self-defense, there are so many means of legal recourse that exist for them. First, as far as municipal charges that are going to be brought against you, and then state and federal charges, which are immediately going to follow. In fact, you're probably going to have several cases, and that's if you just don't get shot. You know what I'm saying? Like the moment that, so like there are legal means of recompense for law enforcement. However, there are very few legal means of recompense for a citizen, right? Like if you're damaged, it's not like you can sue the law enforcement department or sue the city or sue the state or sue the government. Like those, so already you're talking about a different application of force and what the rules and value of danger are, right? The third thing that I would end with is you have, like in Japan, they use taihojutsu. There are almost no police with guns in Japan. Japan is a modern country. I mean, it's beyond modern. It's hyper contemporary. Even in Britain, okay, like if we want to keep it in Western traditions, they carry a big ass baton. And I'm not trying to make like those are the kindest, most gentle police ever, but very few law enforcement officers in Britain have guns. So why is it the criminals aren't just, damaging all of these people? It just doesn't. So that whole mythology of if we didn't have tanks, the commoners would kill us. It's dangerous, for a tenth of the price of a tank, right? Which I can't understand why law enforcement would ever need these kind of munitions, right? Everybody in the department could be trained in styles like taihojutsu, which is the Japanese art of submission, where you tie people up and you know what I'm saying? Like this could happen, right? And then it's much less danger to everybody involved. That's a radical change that's already been implemented. It's not even like you'd have to figure out how to do it because there's the Japanese model that you would just implement. This is change, as opposed to someone like Biden who's just like, well, let's just shoot him in the leg. Bruh. Like, are you Annie fucking Oakley? Like, that's such a ridiculous, and it's like, it goes to show the difference between neoliberalism and fascism. Fascism is like, shoot that black person in the head. Neoliberalism is like, well, shoot them somewhere else. And we're supposed to see that like some kind of radical, all right. Come on, man. That's hard business. It has to. That is a beautiful child, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that. She's looking up at me like, what's going on here? Jayanma. Her name's Jayanma.
Ah,
There you go. Now she's smiling.
I'm pretty.
Which I know you know, so I'm not saying this for you, but for folks listening. So everything you just said to me is like neutral. So that's, let's say that if police were enforcing these militaristic, practices on us all equally, but they're not. On top of that, there's the white supremacist origins and systemic nature of police, which is what we're talking about.
Coming from the American tradition of slave catching patrols. And that's a whole nother level, right? Like, again, right, I'm trying to keep it as don't see race, which is totally not my whole perspective. I'm just trying to like debunk this so that even the most rabid conservative has to concede these points. Yeah. Like, again, if you're innocent until proven guilty, and think about this, right? Because I remember there was a great white poet in Little Rock before I left. I really respected his writing. He wanted to be an activist, and I remember before he moved into Little Rock, I was on tour, and everywhere I kept going, I kept running into this dude. It was like doing a show at Clitorati with Teresa and all them, scene dude. Then I was doing a show for Cuban and Jacksonville, scene dude again. I'm like, damn. And then he ended up in Little Rock. I'm like, oh, that's what's up. You're already deeply involved in the slam community. And I remember we ended up falling out because he was super anti-death penalty. And the time that he chose to like go the hardest in the paint for that shit was Dylan Roof. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, bro, this is the time to really kind of like sit this one out, bro. Like to be the white guy, like the death penalty is wrong. And this motherfucker then went into a black church and like whacked fucking St. Valentine's Day massacre style, whacked all these black people, respectable Negroes even, right? And then like now's the time when you're gonna be like, well, the death penalty is wrong, right? So we have states where the death penalty doesn't even exist, and yet law enforcement is still able to use lethal force. Like you can't even rationalize and make these things like equal. You can't rationalize this kind of concept. Like in a state where the death penalty doesn't exist, no law enforcement officer should be able to use lethal force. And again, these are like considered some kind of radical positions. Like even Democrats don't hold these kind of positions. And it's like, it should be logical because your state believes there are no crimes that are worthy of death. And yet people that haven't even been convicted of crimes are being killed. And overwhelmingly, they look like me. So I do want to address that because another argument that conservatives tend to use is, well, more white people are killed than black people. And that's true. But where it falls apart at the seam is when you start to look at the percentages. The percentage of what white people make up in America, like dwarfs, right? Black people. Black people represent 12 to 13% of the American population, but we don't represent 12 to 13% of the extrajudicial murder. We are a much higher percentage in that. So it's like there's a much higher probability as a black person you will be lethally executed by law enforcement than a white person. Even if the number of white people that die higher, the statistical probability it's almost infinitely smaller.
Well, I have a feeling that this yes, Giant was in agreement. For me, this is something that I am resonating with and I believe in, but you're, as you already said earlier, that you are a genius both in practice and on paper, and the amount of research and thought and time that you put into bringing forth your arguments. I know for me, I just had a lot of ahas. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I remember what we talked about on your the last time I was on was we broke down the concept of a maximum wage. Everybody's like, why would we do that? And I'm like, oh, there are a few reasons.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're a I don't know, head of the curve, vanguard, all of those things intellectually in practice as an artist. I mean, you're a treasure, man. Like a treasure of the world. Like you're one of those people. So I just honored to know you. Yeah. So why don't we introduce Jayanma to this might be her first spoken word poem. So our first spoken word live performance. So do you want to share a poem with us?
Absolutely. One of the things I like to do, and also my upcoming book, Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins, will be hitting the bookstores October 15th. And I want to do a poem from there. One of the things I wanted to do in this book is really do a deep dive into what my life has been like. And so there are lots of recurring characters, and most of them are people that I came up with that all had different experiences in this thing. So Rob is a character that gets mentioned a lot. He was mentioned in the last poem, and he'll be in this poem as well. Big timers. Arkansas. Rob was still with us. Taz was there too. Rob's cell released back then with the bell ring. Back then, Taz padded up to show hard. Together, they were gang and gridiron. And there was a Serbian girl, Slavica, big as her tercel, big as the body of the Rob, whose big fists were small saucers, big as the company they secretly kept together. They did it big, and there was a big brother, Stoyan, awkward, big Harry, a good 250, and still only the fourth biggest in the double wide. Then the devil snapped, attacked himself, shot for the heart, survived like a proper dumb Rocktown black boy. Us and them roaches, it's what we do. And I'm there, the least of us all, broken as my overdrafts, hiding from the wife I loathe, foisted on me by the families I feared, fucked from a little pillow kissing session, a little less than safe, and we are smiling, drinking Vignac, aged in Baltic oaks, and Rob is swearing by the blood with all them bullets he swiped from Taz, still in his pockets, thinking about spending them in the big way on the out-of-pocket Wolf Street motherfucker that stay talking shit. Slavica is cursing and giggling and flirting and dreaming big about ways her and Rob spend a life. They talk about Black Lives Matter, man, and it's like I think about all of the homies that I came up with in the hood in Little Rock, and literally, man, it sounds like hyperbole, but more than half my homies are like in prison or dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, do Black Lives Matter? Like, I wonder that all the time. Like, as far as society goes, of course, I understand and have a feeling for it, but the fact is, I remember Taz, who I'm talking about in the book, and he's R.I.P. Bless his soul. He was mentally unwell from just all of the struggles of being a black boy coming up in the hood. And I remember one time he came to me and he was like, bruh, I really feel like I need to go to a hospital. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm having like hallucinations and I'm having thoughts to self-injure. Man, we took him in and we did everything you're supposed to do. We took him to the psychiatrist. She literally committed him for 30 days. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that, like you're going there to be like, I don't know if I feel well. I just want to be observed for a night or two. Give me put me in some fucking therapy. Maybe give me a prescription. He was literally committed for 30 days. And those experiences fucked up his brain chemistry for life. They're shooting him up with all kinds of shit that he can't consent to simply because he did the right thing and was like, I'm having thoughts of self-harm. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he's no longer even with us. Rob from the poem is in prison for life, no potential for parole, because as we allude to in the poem, there was a rival gang down the street. They were both Bloods. Even this wasn't even like Blood and Crip shit. It was another gang down in a different part of the city that had been fucking with him. You know what I'm saying? Dude that busted at him more than once, and he saw him again. And that day he happened to be strapped. He emptied the clip, and like you can't explain that on like I just watch all of these white guys stand their ground all the time, no question. You know what I'm saying? Like immediately it was look, Robert was 340 pounds, easy, big dude, big black dude, scary looking guy, right? If you're afraid of black people. But he was a big man by no, you know what I'm saying? And it was like, well, you shot this guy and you killed this guy and you acknowledge you were in a gang. And it's like, this wasn't a gang shooting, bro. This was like a dickhead that fucking hates me, that's tried to kill me more than once, and I wasn't going to let it fucking happen again, In prison for life, no potential for parole. And I remember going into the court with him, right? And the judge says, like, it's some kind of big gift. Well, I just want you to know right now, we've taken the death penalty off the table. I'm like, what the fuck is the homie supposed to do? Like, turn a backflip? Be like, thank you, Your Honor? You know, you can't even be like, fuck you, dude, because now you're in contempt of court in addition to everything else. This is the reality that I came up with. These are the people that I came up with. You know what I'm saying? And all of this stuff was instrumental in framing my understanding. People hear me talk in this intellectual way, but they fail to understand the hood is not like a moral judgment or a character judgment of what kind of person you are. It's a socioeconomic judgment. I was a poor black dude. Smart as I fucking was, I was a poor black dude. And the poor black dudes that lived by me, most of them were in gangs. And it wasn't because they hated everybody and were fucking sociopaths.
Well, you know, you bring up the more you share things, the more it brings up for me things that are used as weapons against black and brown people. Because, you know, not having money doesn't have to become a weapon, you know, politically. But in our country, it is. Like, we weaponize poverty against people, and we weaponize the court system, and like the way we look at prisons. You know what I mean? Like, this one moment in this guy's life, you know, no matter who you become, you're going to be stuck in there in a place where violence is used intentionally to subjugate you and exploit you for your labor. So it's just like
and institutionalized sexual slavery, because
yes,
that has to be acknowledged, right? I think about all of the advocacy against rape that happens, and no one seems to like really discuss prisoners in that scenario in that way. Whatever, let's say you did murder someone. Let's say that, right? If rape is not a tool of rehabilitation, right? So like that can't be part of your punishment. You can't be, if this is something you're being subjected to day in and day out, right? Like, how can this happen in a place that's supposed to be under guard, right? Like, whatever the fuck I'm trying to meditate on and come to terms with and be better about for my failing, assuming I did this shit, right? How is this part of what my rehabilitation process is? How is no one liable for the violence and injuries that I come under while I'm under the care of the state? I'm remanded to the state, you know? I mean, these are questions that we have to ask ourselves. Because if this happened in a Walmart might have liability. Maybe not guaranteed, but probably they would. And as these prisons are corporations that are privately traded on the stock, these aren't even like institutions of the state, whereas like they would have the protection of state. These are corporations, and I don't understand how liability doesn't become an issue for these kind of things. These are the kind of conversations that have to really happen when we talk about what does prison reform look like? What does law enforcement reform look like? Not like shoot them in the fucking leg. Like, it's just so insulting. And that's the black experience, right? Like, it's my fault if America is somehow unable to not vote out Trump, right? Even though we're only 12% of the population. Black people, if only we'd mobilized harder for a guy that was a segregationist, right? Who feels like reparations is not his fault. These are all things that Biden said. Who makes up gangster black people like Corn Pop, who he had a stern talking to. I mean, this is all shit from his past. Who weep for Strom Thurmond, a noted segregationist, who attacked Anita Hill. I mean, I can just go on and on about the way that he has failed and victimized black people, to say nothing of the crime bill. And we got there last, right? People act like, oh, it's just this one thing that he did, right? But again, right, there's no such type of remembrance for my homies, right? Rob doesn't get to have one mistake in his life and, oh my God, he's learned so much. But Joe Biden can make a mistake that sent millions of black men to jail, and I'm supposed to forgive him and somehow like overlook my own agenda as a black person to save America once again from this fascist.
Sorry, I'm slow with the unmute and switch screens.
Yeah, I know, man. You're masterful. You're doing the most. You're doing the most.
I mean, once again, it's like, pacifier down. MoMan, you lead so many conversations, and I'm sorry you get so much flack for it, but with the anyone but Trump, that it's not a solution. You're one of the first and loudest and most resonating voices vocalizing that it's not a solution.
Right. Look, Americans are in love with not just they're in love with cult of personality politics. And I think where cult of personality politics fails us is it fails to indict that there are underlying systems that happen, regardless as to whether or not there's a Democrat or a Republican at play, right? So, like, if we're not looking at systems, right, and we're looking at human beings, look, even as much as Cheeto can do, right, there's only so much he can do, right, which means there's only so much he can undo. And the same thing is true to whoever eventually replaces him, right? Like, again, one of the arguments, so another thing that gets thrown at me is like, well, what about the Supreme Court? And I'm like, what about the Supreme Court, right? Like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has employed exactly as many black people as Kavanaugh. Horrible and the answer is one. In all of those years, one black person has clerked for her. She called Kaepernick his protest rude and disrespectful, right? And she's the very best of them, is what I'm told, right? And so I have to look for and again, there's no guarantee that someone like a Joe Biden would even pick a liberal to put on the court, because he himself is not a liberal. You know what I'm saying? His entire career, he's attempted to make consensus in the middle with other Republicans. And so it's just his type of thing to be able to pick a middle of the road judiciary pick that's, again, not in any kind of way a friend to black people or subordinate to black politics. So that, again, there's not even a promise of something down the line for black people, because our agendas are taken for granted. It's like, what else are you going to do? Are you going to vote for the Republican? That's not sustainable. Man, fatherhood becomes you, man. It's great, man. It's a whole good look on you, man. It's a great
Thank you. It's so much fun. I gotta say, it's so much fun. Well, on that note, selfishly, anytime I get a chance to talk to people that I appreciate and admire, I like to rope them into being a part of her life. Hang on, let's see.
She's just trying to add her input. It's her fault for not understanding the language. She's really giving us the truth. She's giving us the answer.
So, let me see if I can sit down. So my question is, what advice do you have for Giant Ma growing up in America with, any advice you want to offer her for, maintaining self-love in the face of all of these things that can be, pushing against that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. My advice would be, look beyond the paradigm of harm reduction. Believe that new systems are possible, that the best things that humanity is capable of have not yet been thought. And it's not going to be reforming an old idea and reshaping it. It's going to be reimagining a total new answer. It's going to be a paradigm shift. Never be afraid to say something that someone else hasn't said yet, right? And to look everywhere for models where what you're trying to do might work, I mean, I just remember the whole Obama thing with the American Health Care Act, right? Which was much better than what we had before, right? But still pales in comparison to things like the Cuban model or even the Canadian model, right? There were already models that existed that we could have adapted, but the reality is we should be thinking about something like, what are the failures of the Cuban model? How can we make a model that's even better than that, as opposed to what is the answer I can do where I'm not going to cost this doctor his third Lamborghini, and I don't put the insurance companies out of business. Something where nobody's all the way happy, but nobody's all the way hurt, right? Sometimes, man, people get to not be fucking happy. What the fuck do I care if insurance stock goes down? Insurance's whole thing is to make you make a bet against yourself, saying that they say you'll need help, you say you won't. That's by nature a really odd kind of a company, you know? And nothing should be in between the care that you need and a doctor provides.
She got like super silent as soon as you started giving advice, so she knows it's time to listen.
Doing what I can, man. Doing what I can.
So, if you feel it's appropriate to speak to, one thing we recognize, Dora and I, is that, whatever way we want to define, of course, we're going to let her define her race for herself. That said, just living in America, whiteness is constantly bombarded on you. So we intentionally want to...
Right. So I've thought about that before, right? My nesting partner, for example, is biracial. And I think one of the things that, is a perspective that she brought to me that I thought was really useful was one of the things that people say is, I'm half black, I'm half white, I'm half Korean, right? And none of those things are true. You can't be half of anything. You are white. You are black. You're both of those things. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's important to acknowledge that. So like, as relates to your daughter, right? She will always have a tie to whiteness. And it's important that she understands that about herself. She will have ties to blackness. It's important that she understands that about herself. My nesting partner is not half black. She's black. She's not half Korean. She's Korean. Right? And she has all of the roles and rules of both of those cultures in her at all times, not even necessarily competing. They both live inside of her. And I think that's something your daughter will have,
Let's see if I can get the full one in there. When she's though walking through the landscape of understanding what it means to be black in America, and maybe any sort of self-love encouragement that you might want to share, or if she's looking for a North Star, how to get back home to that self-love if ever she finds herself, feeling the pressures, anything that you might, and you don't have to speak on it if you don't want, but just wanted to ask if you do.
I mean, for me, it's just don't let these people gaslight you. You know what I'm saying? What you feel is what you feel. What your experience is and what you're experiencing, and speak on that shit. You know what I'm saying? The same way that people advocate for the Second Amendment, we, especially as black people, have to advocate very hard for the First Amendment. We have to utilize that First Amendment freedom to tell our stories, even if those are stories that make other people uncomfortable. There's a difference between feeling uncomfortable and being threatened. There's a difference between feeling uncomfortable and being in danger. If our stories make you feel uncomfortable just listening to them, imagine how painful they are for us as black people who have to actually live them. Like, I'm just recanting for you my life. I'm telling you the stories that I've went through. You know what I'm saying? And people will be like, oh my God, he grew up with gangsters and drug dealers and murderers. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I did, like this was my life. And it is what it is. And all of those things shaped me and brought me to the consciousness that I have now, that have made me who I am, but also telling me stories of the ways that I've been harmed, right? It's not, being indicted can't be worse, right? We hear about this all the time. Like, oh my God, they call me a racist. Being called a racist is not worse than actually being a racist. Like, the harm you do by perpetuating racism is far eclipses the damage to your ego of being called a racist. This is why I say every man in America or that's socialized in the West should just own the fact that you are a sexist and not be proud of it. Work every day to be a little less sexist. Work very hard to advocate for being seen as an aspiring ally to people that identify as women, right? And in that same conversation, if you are white in the West, you should own the fact that you are racist and you need to work every day to be a little less racist. Being called a racist is not as bad as being a racist. Being called a sexist is not as bad as being a sexist. And only the ego obfuscates these simple facts.
I appreciate that. And I always think of it too as I'd rather have the choice to become a better person. So it hurts now when you tell me, like, it smarts because I realize I didn't live up to the values I have. But now I get the opportunity because somebody took the emotional labor and time it takes to say, this is how you messed up, that I now get the chance to be a better person. Even if on the inside I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I've messed up on my values. I now get to make sure I don't do it again. So that's at least the way I try to look at it, you know?
Absolutely.
Okay, two last questions for you. This is just me always doing my agenda of building my daughter a community. What can she turn to you for? Or it could be a prompt. Like, you can turn to me if you're looking to, when you need what can she turn to you for as someone a part of her world?
For me, man, I feel like the single most important thing that can happen is come to me for reading suggestions. Excuse me. Because, some books I'm looking at right now, literally, the collected poems of Audre Lorde, world poetry, aloud, voices from the New Eurekan Poets Cafe. You know what I'm saying? These are things that we can do, right? There's always something more to learn. And like, we live in an era of infinite media. And so, like, nobody can get to everything, right? And so, like, there's no shame in reaching out to people that have different experiences because they can give you things to think about, new ways to read, different concepts to consider, right? And that's only to your benefit. Again, when we live in a capitalist framework where they tell you everything has value, when someone gives you knowledge for free, you should take that. Because knowledge is expensive as shit. I'm telling you, these student loans are not fucking around. Looking very unforward to trying to come up on a lick to be able to get all of these cats their money back real quick. So when cats come to you and give you knowledge for free, that's always a benefit that they're giving you. We should take that as a gift.
So in a couple of years here, you'll get a little message from Jayama saying, what book should I read?
Yeah, man, that's what's up. I'll be definitely there for that.
Well, MoMan, I appreciate you. Why don't you go ahead and plug, where can people get your book? Where can they hang out with you? Where can they send you their love? How can they support your work, emotionally, financially, all of those kind of things? Where can that be done?
Again, my book will be coming out on Willow Press. It is Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins. It is a gothic noir, which is a style that I am playing with creating. And it'll be out October 15th. So look for it in all the places that you might buy books of small press poetry. And of course, we'll be online. We'll have ebooks. We'll have all of those things. So, yeah, definitely.
What about the social medias? Where can they do that?
MoMan the Poet. For some of y'all that are trying to get up, I have a podcast, Exit the Matrix Podcast.com. Get with us everywhere where you get podcasts. But everything else, man, MoMan the Poet at everything. MoMan the Poet at Twitter, MoMan the Poet on Facebook, MoMan the Poet Instagram. So, Nadelia is great at that shit. Because I like to live my life, man. Mostly I do a lot of debating and such, and so Instagram is my preferred medium. Even Twitter is difficult because Twitter is great for soundbite activism. 140 words that sound deep as fuck. You know what I'm saying? But you can't really discuss policy in 140 fucking words for nothing. But you can say shit like Black Lives Matter and look woke as fuck.
Well, if I can do a plug, Exit the Matrix, y'all. If you're thinking, that this was great, imagine MoMan with someone else who's got, that same, bringing that same level, because I admit I'm a student. So someone else who's got a real good knowledge base of this. So you get to listen to MoMan. I think it comes out every week or every other week or something like that, right?
We've been kind of in hiatus right now due to COVID. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to respect social distancing. We don't live together, so it's difficult to right now. But we will be back soon. We've been working out ways to do kind of a collaborative efforts. We did a conversation revisiting the Ballad or the Bullet recently, and we're gonna keep doing kind of like special editions. But we'll be back at full strength, when the world gets back to normal, man. Just trying to do our part to not spread anything, to try to do our social distancing, but also social distancing. Always.
Anything that hasn't been said yet that you'd like to speak to?
I just think about one of the conversations that happens a whole lot is, oh my God, this person died. You don't even know this person died, right? You're not a real activist. You didn't say nothing when this person died. And I think a reality is so many of us are killed. In reality, a lot of these Black people are just hashtags. And so that was kind of the motivation behind my thoughts on that piece. And I would just like to end with that if I can. Ours is the people so magical. They can turn from skin to hashtag in less than the time it takes a police cam to fall. Now, when this happens, and it will, and it does, there it goes again. Magic. Seedious smile. Rage, but quietly. This is a bully beyond slang. Do not go sacrifice. Do not go fist and hammers. Do not go mouth of man and salt. We must go quietly. We must go. Tedious senses. Wave at the sun. Wave at your sons. Wave at brown curly hair. Stare at the majesty of your daughters. Kiss them both if they consent. But you must relent. For a hashtag could never hold this much humanity, and they're holding one for you, hot and ready like fast food. This is how they slay. They'll call it justice. Lemons for lemonade. There'll be a video. There's always a video. Do not watch the video. We all know how Lethal Weapon ends. Cry if you have the tears, and love, and love, even while you hate, even as you are breaking, even as they justify, even as they deny. Do not go empty, even as they pour us out like blood. Ours is a people so magical, we still believe, we hope. Pretty as autumn leaves, deep in the falling. Ours is a people so magical that some could sing through slavery. Bravery is Black joy. Black love is Black joy, and she is all ours. Watch us wear her like a superpower. Do not go wanting. Drink and be filled. Drink until it spills from your cheeks. Drink until it kills. It is coming. Make peace with certainty, so that when you and the violence meet, you will not go meek. Look into the cameras. Show them the threat of your impotency. There may be some slight discomfort, but it'll all be over soon. Like a magic trick. Poof. It's happened again. Another hashtag is ready.
Thank you for sharing that, MoMan.
Blessings, man. You're doing good work, man. I appreciate the fact that you're always growing, man. I was talking about you with a good friend of mine earlier, my dear partner, and I was like, yeah, the thing about Tom is he's a great activist, and like when you look at the fact that like when I met him, he had locks, he's like a traditional white guy with locks, activist. And the next time I saw him, like, they were gone. Like, somebody spoke to him, he did the right thing, like, he didn't hem and haw about the shit. And like, it's just proof that like people can move beyond not understanding things. Like, knowledge is one thing, but wisdom is the ability to implement knowledge in a way that grows us and makes us better, man. I really appreciate you, man, for all of the work you do, man. You're always putting in work. And it's seen, man. Much appreciation.
I appreciate that affirmation. It means a lot to me. Thank you. Well, MoMan, this has been, as always, the reason why we just want you to keep coming back every day. So thanks for joining us.
Gang, stay up, bro.
I will. You too. And to all those who are listening or watching, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.